And if you're tuning in, today I want to talk to you about something that I keep hearing, especially from my executive clients. As you all know, I help professionals all the way to the C level. I would say a good portion of my clients are senior individual contributors, but I also have a handful of clients that I closely work with at a time who are VP to C level. And the common thing that I keep hearing is how difficult it is to actually make a career change. And when I talk about career change, I'm not talking about hopping from one job to another laterally. I'm talking about you've been doing the same thing day in and day out. You've been at the same organization for more than 5 years. And you realize that, you have a great job, but it's getting boring and repetitive, and you're itching for something more, something bigger. But it's so scary. It's so scary going through it. It feels like you have to practically reinvent yourself. And so today, what I'm going to do, and I got my tea here with me. I wish there was a shot of tequila in it because what I'm about to confess to you is a lot of, I will say, very personal stuff, hard stuff that I've been through. I'll share with you my story of what it's been like for me as a founder, building a six-figure business for the last 5 years, on my way to seven figures, how tough it's been to actually make changes in my own career. Because guess what? Even as a founder, as an entrepreneur, we also have careers. Anyways, if you're listening, I'd love for you to let me know that you're listening so that I don't feel like I'm speaking to the void. Give me a like, comment, whatever is the easiest for you. And now I'm going to take a sip. And yeah, share with you from my own experience. Okay, so my story actually is going to begin with the fact that last year in 2024, after putting all of my heart and soul, and we'll call it multiple $100,000 into my business, I realized that I wanted to pivot. I feel like I plateaued, but I had no idea what I wanted to do next. And what I've also realized that there was a parallel going on here. I actually was in a 9-year relationship where I was not happy. And my wake up call was when he forgot to log out from my computer. And I saw this YouTube video that said, how to get younger women to chase you. I mean, I guess I look old, but anyway, that was staring me in the face. And it honestly did not surprise me. That video was practically a summary of our entire relationship. 43-year-old man living with his parents, unemployed for 5 years, spending his time on pickup artist forums. And I'm not trying to badmouth anyone here, but I'm just trying to paint the picture. Because it honestly was embarrassing. Here I am, the career coach who's been building an entire brand around taking risks, around leaving situations that don't serve people. My brand was built around courage, around going for bigger. Yet I was in a relationship with a man who didn't share my values. And it's not because I thought I didn't deserve better, but because leaving meant, like all of you in your careers, meant facing the messy middle. Lonely holidays, going on bad dates, the fear of starting over. And all of these, things that I was telling myself around, hey, it's too late for you to find the right person. All of the partners out there are taken. I don't have time, all of these excuses, which frankly, I also hear from my clients when we talk about going bigger. The economy's bad, there aren't enough jobs out there. The reason I'm sharing with you this personal story is because sometimes we forget that our career is actually a life transition. So I want to share with you why it's very hard to actually leave a situation that doesn't serve us, whether it's in our career or outside of our career. But at the end of the day, however you want to call it, it is a change, a personal change. And most of us have difficulty navigating change. I was talking to a few executive clients of mine, and some of the things that we work on is actually going out and networking. And a lot of the times what I hear my clients tell me, and these are ambitious, amazing, fabulous clients, they've done so much in their career, is they'll say that I feel like an imposter. I feel like an imposter going and networking with people who are not in my space because I'm out of my element and I don't feel like I have value to offer outside of my own element. So when I think about myself and I think about why I didn't leave a situation that didn't serve me, it all comes back to the same basic psychological aspects that keep people trapped. I grew up in a house with a father who was an alcoholic. His behavior was very unpredictable. We didn't know when he was going to lash out, when he was going to break things. And my mom was a very brilliant, charismatic, entrepreneurial leader, but she stayed. She stayed in the relationship. And I felt that in order for me to actually feel safe, I had to adopt some survival patterns. Whether it's don't speak up, because if you speak up, you're going to get beaten up. Don't stand out, be invisible, hide in order to be safe. So, and then the other, behavior that I also adopted is distract yourself with your achievements. Work hard in order to distract yourself. So I became the perfect student, the over-credentialed adult who thought safety came through not being myself, because my system and my body felt that to be safe, I had to ignore what I enjoy doing. To be safe, I couldn't be my authentic self. So this is the parallel that I see in people's career. It's the same pattern that kept me in, sadly, a 9-year relationship, and almost made me feel like I'm a crazy person because I had to have a split personality. The successful, entrepreneur and coach that you guys all see on LinkedIn with a 45 almost thousand following, yet someone who's going through a very dysfunctional relationship that clearly wasn't a fit and wasn't aligned to where I am in my life. It's a different context, but it's the same fear. And to be honest, the true reason was I didn't want to feel alone. And that's honestly what it comes down to with a lot of folks when it comes to making a change in their career. You've been going into the same organization, you've been talking to the same people, you've been building the same relationship. There's a level of attachment, whether you like it or not, even if you don't absolutely love the people that you're working with, there's a level of attachment because you are a human being. And there may be childhood survival patterns that you are not conscious about that are playing out. And I'm going to list some of these psychological mechanisms. So the first one is around attachment theory. Attachment theory, a lot of you may know this, there's anxious attached, someone who's avoidant, blah, blah, blah. But where the attachment theory comes true, and I see this in a lot of clients, especially executives, coaches, is that the reason we decided to become executives or coaches is because we want to play out the caregiver persona that we've been playing out in our childhood, or we may not have gotten. A lot of people will say, for example, I want to become the leader that I didn't have, or I want to become the executive that I wasn't mentored by. And so we tend to fall dangerously into extremes of these personas, such as, let's say, the caregiver giver child relationship from internal working models. And so growing up, I played that role a lot with my dad, going off the rails, and then my mom, basically being impacted. I would often be playing a giver role to my mom, where I would try to hold the peace. And so at a subconscious level that formed, and I could not distinguish that in my own relationships. And it impacted things and made it difficult for me to leave a situation that didn't serve me. The other pitfall that is psychological based is what I call a sunk cost fallacy. The higher investment we make into a situation, the more we perceive it as costly to leave. So for me, obviously, 9 years, it was difficult. The more years that basically flew by, the harder, even when things were so bad, the harder it made it for me to leave. Even when my brain was logically telling me that this is not the right relationship. And so I just want to, I'm sharing something personal here because I want to normalize why people struggle. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you someone who's weak. You just have to understand that that you are a human being, and there are psychological inner workings that happen behind the scenes. And if you understand them, it makes it so much easier for you to actually take action. Now, the third one that I want to talk about is called rationalizing abuse, internalizing blame. So, what happens when we are in a very toxic environment, whether it's with a partner or it is in a work environment, a toxic boss, narcissistic boss? This is something that I commonly hear from leaders, especially at the top. You feel like you have so much to lose. Maybe you have pension tied to your role. Maybe you have monetary benefits that are going to pay out the longer you stay. Um, maybe and on top of that, you have a boss that is minimizing everything that you do, that is not recognizing the work that you do, that keeps telling you, oh, what you do is just too easy. Do more, do better, right? You inevitably, because you see that person in a role almost like a parental role, you start rationalizing the abuse in order to create safety for yourself. And that clouds your judgment. You end up being in this roller coaster of up and down. One day that boss is in a good mood and you're like, oh, maybe I should just stay. Everything is good. And then the next day, that boss becomes dismissive, makes you feel bad, gives credit to someone else and not you. And so the thing that you have to really pay attention to is, are you rationalizing that person's behavior? And that can be a slippery, slippery, slippery slope. The last one that I wanted to talk about is actually fear of abandonment, shame, and identity threats. So I personally found that the longer I stayed in the relationship, the more I revolved my identity around that person. I felt, well, who am I without this person? And it's the same thing with our career. Sometimes we tend to say, well, if I leave this career situation, if I change industries, if I change roles, who am I without that role? I'm worthless. Very dangerous belief. So, how did I leave the relationship? Actually, how I left was by creating a support system. And you know what? I'm not saying that it's always feasible to leave a situation or a job or a career, right? What I am saying is that you might legitimately have a lot to lose if you leave tomorrow, especially with nothing lined up. But what you can do is build an exit strategy. And that always works beautifully for all my clients. And it actually worked for me. So I realized that when I was in that relationship, um, I couldn't just leave, just going from, being with that same person to nothing was very hard. So what I had to do was work with a therapist to help me build my resiliency, to help me be able to face and deal with the emotion and the messy middleness of, not being around that familiarity. And this is something that I work with clients on, right? Because we need to work through all of the attachments that you have with your current role. And of course, when we put a strategy together from figuring out, well, what is it exactly that you enjoy doing? What is the career that you love? What is the job that you love? I believe that when we have a target, and I often call it, your sweet spot, recognizing your sweet spot, your calling, your zone of genius, you're going to be a lot more excited because you're going to feel like there is a destination outside of that dark tunnel that you can strive for. If you're not clear on what that target is or that destination, then you're going to feel doomed. You're going to feel like there's no option. You're not going to be motivated to better your situation, right? So that's number one. Number two, we got to be aware of all of those psychological traps that I described at the beginning to understand why you're blocking yourself from making the move. What are all of the things that you're telling yourself that are not true? And then we got to build a brand. We got to build a brand and a personal network. I will tell you that what made it difficult for me to actually leave, my relationship is my personal brand, is having conversations with people who uplift me, who have the same values, and realizing that there are so many alternatives out there. When you're sitting in your little bubble and you're putting your head down and you're doing the work day in and day out, of course, you're going to realize that there's no option out there, right? But what I'll tell you, the irony of it all is, what really helped me leave is actually uh, feeling fulfilled in my own career. So it is quite interesting because when we fix an area in our life, it empowers us to fix another area of our life. And especially as a female, um, it's very important for me to feel self-sufficient. So I don't think I would have been able to leave the relationship 5 years ago, mainly because I was unhappy with my career. And I just felt like if you're unhappy with your career and you haven't built something for yourself and you don't have that self-worth, how are you gonna, like go out and meet someone who's aligned, right? All right. So I actually wrote an article about this, and I'd love to actually share it with you all. If you're interested, send me a DM or comment, article. I've been building a framework around career reinventions, and I've been segmenting it into multiple episodes. Episode number 1 is around how the first sign that you need a reinvention is actually something physical that happens to you, a sickness. The second part of the reinvention is when you wake up, you realize something is wrong, and you start doing the work and recognizing the patterns, the behaviors, the psychological behaviors that lead to you putting yourself in these wrong situations. Because at the end of the day, we're no longer children, right? And that's the hard part that I had to digest. You have choices. You can make the right choice for you. But we often let our subconscious, take over. And then the third one is setting boundaries. Setting boundaries comes from understanding what brings you joy beyond just a title. A lot of people get hung up over, well, what title should I go for, that kind of thing. But it's a lot more than that. Especially when you are at the leadership level, we tend to have a more entrepreneurial mindset. And I've actually encouraged all of my clients, regardless of what level they are, is to um, go after their career in an entrepreneurial way, drive it. Think of your career almost like a portfolio of products. What do you want to have in your portfolio? What's going to give you the best return on investment? And once you put those boundaries together, you need to have a support system. The support system is extremely important, including a community, including, a guide who helps you, holds your hand through the ups and downs, because it is a life transition and it is an emotional journey. It's a lot more than, oh, I need to build a brand and I need to put together a resume. It's about understanding the big picture, having systems in place to help you get to the destination. But most of all, it's about understanding yourself and understanding what brings you joy. Because if you don't know that and you don't articulate that clearly, and sometimes we may think that we know what we want, but we're just in this humongous, messy middle where everything is all over the place and we don't know where to start. Okay, this is my little spiel for my Monday, completely unstructured. If you found this useful, I would appreciate it if you give me a like, just so that I know who's watching, who's listening. If you want to read my article, which has the entire framework and has snippets and stories of clients who went through this and my own story, let me know in the comments. Put in reinvention. If you're a very private person and you don't want to comment and you don't want anyone to know that you're watching, then feel free to send me a LinkedIn DM and I can share with you the article link. All right, my friends, I hope you have a wonderful Monday.